My name is Jenny. I'm 38 years old, and while I used to stay slim without any effort when I was younger, I've noticed a bit of a belly lately. Perhaps this is middle-aged spread. But I suppose it's better than being too skinny like I was in my youth. I keep telling myself this to put off dieting, planning to start next year rather than tomorrow. By next year, I'll probably say, diet? Maybe next year. Now, I'll talk about a time when not only my body but also my mind was finer. Or maybe not. I felt like my heart was covered in thick hair. Well, it's a nostalgic story from those times. I'd love for you to listen. This happened about 10 years ago. My husband Steve's father, my father-in-law, passed away suddenly. That event significantly changed my daily life. It's pitiful to leave my mom alone at home, so I've decided to let her live with us. What? It was our 4th year of marriage. I was speechless at his sudden suggestion. To tell the truth, I don't get along well with my mother-in-law. She adored Steve too much and seemed to have wanted to keep him all to herself without marrying him off. If it couldn't be helped, she would have been okay with him marrying his ex-girlfriend, who she really liked. Well, honestly, that might also be a lie. She probably just said that to spite me. You will never let him marry, will you? Said my father-in-law. I'll end up alone. Steve added, and somehow we got her to agree to our marriage. Then, my mother-in-law proposed living in a duplex house. I was firmly against it, but Steve was like, I'm fine either way. Since then, the clash between my no to duplex and her live in a duplex or give my son back dug a deep rift in our mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. My father-in-law used to stop her from going too far, but it seems the balance was lost with his death. Living together. You didn't even discuss this with me. Do I need to discuss having my parents live in a house that's in my name? I was speechless. Maybe he's right. But isn't it strange to decide without discussing it even when we're married? I was both annoyed and confused. However, no matter how many times I asked him to reconsider, Steve repeatedly insisted. It's already decided. Perhaps it would have been better to attach another house next to ours and live as a duplex. If I'm honest, I disliked both options, but at that time, I wished we could have at least discussed it more. Unfortunately, the very next day, my mother-in-law came to our house. When I saw her standing at the front door, the theme from Jaws played in my head, which would be a secret. I thought, oh no, from today on, I really have to live with this woman. Deeply disappointed, I led her to the living room, where she exclaimed, wow. The sense of interior is terrible. Why do you have such ugly sofas and cushions? I braced myself for comments about dirtiness, but the interior design? I'm sorry, Steve chose that. Sorry, Mom. I chose it. Shall we go buy your sofa together? As we said that, my mother-in-law's expression changed completely. Oh, if it's just the sofas, that's a great choice. But the sofas and the cushions don't match, do they? Let's go buy some cushions. She smiled sweetly and intertwined her arm with Steve's like a girlfriend. Seeing this, I got goosebumps on my arms. He also smiled sheepishly and reciprocated. Seriously, no way. Steve has always tended not to argue with his mother. Maybe he's just bad at standing up to his parents. Thanks to her demand for family time. Steve would stay several nights at his parents' house during holidays like Easter and Christmas, while I hardly ever went there except for Christmas. Because of this, I didn't have to watch their interactions for long hours. However, witnessing Steve and mother-in-law like this made me think. Could he be a mama's boy? No, that can't be right. I tried desperately to dismiss my suspicions, but they turned into conviction from the first day of living together. I'm going out to buy cushions with Mom, so you prepare dinner. Mom, what would you like to eat? How about Chinese? Can you make chili shrimp, Jenny? Sure you can, Jenny. I'm counting on you for chili shrimp and other Chinese dishes. With that, the pair left, assigning me the dinner preparation. There was no shrimp in the fridge. I thought, does this mean I also have to go shopping? It's not strange for them to go shopping together, but there's something slightly irritating about it. She didn't move from another state. In fact, her house is just around the corner. She should know the stores around here well enough. Let her buy her own cushions, and you should help with the housework. I had to suppress the urge to punch the wall, and irritated, I went out shopping. After returning from the shopping, I prepared the Chinese cuisine my mother-in-law wanted, waiting for their return. But they didn't come back, even though it was already evening, after having left in the morning. Worried as you would think, I decided to contact him. Hey, where are you? Dinner's ready. What? Dinner? Oh, sorry, just eat there. What do you mean? I'm out eating Chinese food with Mom. It's been fun catching up with her, and I completely forgot about dinner at home. Sorry. Steve laughed as if he had made a simple oversight. Hearing his laughter, I felt a boiling frustration. After going out of my way to buy groceries and cook for 3, I thought, if you were going to eat out, I could have just made something simple for myself. Nevertheless, I didn't want to eat with her anyway, so I didn't feel left behind. Anyway, it's only natural to be upset when you are asked by someone to prepare a meal and then get abandoned. This rocky start made me wonder if I could really manage living with my mother-in-law in the future. My anxiety only grew over the following 2 weeks. The relationship with my mother-in-law, which I had hoped might improve, only deteriorated day by day. She would constantly criticize my way of doing housework and my lifestyle. Take a bath before cooking dinner, it's unhygienic. Don't store perishables in their original packaging in the fridge, transfer them to airtight containers to avoid odors. Don't use disposable wipes for cleaning. Just use a rag. While I could almost understand her nitpicking, her next demand was baffling. Don't go to bed before Steve. Wait at least an hour and a half after he does. What kind of rule is that? It seemed like she was taking her son's authority too far. While I wanted to suggest sharing household duties since we were living together, I held back because I wanted to get along with her. I really wanted to improve the tense atmosphere in our home, so I tried my best to follow my mother-in-law's instructions as much as possible. However, my efforts proved futile. For example, one day, she scolded me for keeping perishables in their original packaging in the fridge. I followed her instructions, but the following day she would likely scold me for transferring them into different containers, claiming the containers would now smell. Her instructions change daily, and what she tells me one day often becomes a completely different story the next. This seemed to be her way of harassing her daughter-in-law. It was incredibly petty, and her smirking after criticizing me was infuriating. Enduring such treatment from morning till night, even someone as tough as me reached their mental limit. Living together for just 2 weeks felt like more than 6 months. I tried discussing this with Steve in our bedroom, but he was hardly supportive. Around that time, he had been overly attached to his mother, even meeting her for dates after work. When was the last time he dated me? Thus, my requests for him to mediate between his mother and me were futile. Mom's cooking has always been delicious. If she says to mind the fridge odors, she's right. She's a respectable mother, so you should just listen to her. You're always complaining about Mom. You don't empathize with how she feels living alone with us at all. Mom is always right. Maybe we should have reconsidered this marriage since she was against it. His praises for her mother was just endless. While I was constantly belittled despite doing all the housework, her inconsistent advice, which she proudly upheld, was increasingly validated. Eventually, I realized it was futile to argue and started thinking about how to endure each day without letting them get to me. It was easier to just nod along and ignore them. Just as I thought I had figured out how to cope, another incident occurred. Are we having fritters today? Oh. Why did you include eggplants, which I hate? Are you trying to upset me? Seeing the dinner dishes, she shouted. Sorry, I didn't know. But Steve likes it. I genuinely didn't know it was her disliked food, so I felt truly sorry. However, it seems it was a mistake to say. But Steve likes it. At that time. That's obvious. Do you think I don't know my own son's tastes? She yelled, infuriated. No, that's not what I meant. Please, don't pull on my apron, it's dangerous. As she yanked on my apron and even tried to pull my hair, she screamed. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. You think you can just show up and take over? I am his one and only mother. Just as she pulled my apron sharply, the tie around my waist came undone, and I lost my balance, causing a pot of hot oil to tip over. Oh my gosh. I promptly pushed her away and dodged the oil, preventing a major accident. However, I couldn't avoid burning the tips of my left toes. Fortunately, it was only a minor burn from the oil that had cooled slightly after spilling. Before I could even cool my fingertips, I endured the pain and asked my mother-in-law. Are you okay? She angrily shouted back. That was dangerous. It's all because you were flailing about. I could have been burned because of you. What a frightening daughter-in-law you are. What? You were pulling on my apron. I was just trying to stop you. Didn't I say it was dangerous? Are you talking back now? After putting me in danger and not even apologizing. You really have no manners. I'd like to see who raised you. I swallowed the words I wanted to say back. You saw my parents at the wedding, didn't you? I had pushed her away to prevent her from getting burned, yet I was the one who got injured. And still, why must I be scolded like this? With all due respect, Mother. Just as I was about to retort, Steve came in from the front door. Really, if you're home, open the door. It's awful not to even unlock it when I ring the bell. Before him was the hot pot, the scattered oil, and a little distance away, his wife in disarray and his mother in a fury. Even my foolish husband could see something was terribly wrong. His face had turned pale. What happened here? He asked, to which his mother clung to him, crying. Steve. Help me. What's going on, Mom? Jenny suddenly started raging while she was cooking. I tried to stop her because it was dangerous, and she pushed me. What? I almost got severely burned by the oil. It was terrifying. I know you might be upset, Jenny, but please, stop bullying an old woman like me. After saying that, the mother-in-law looked at me and smirked. Steve, believing I was at fault without question, glared at me. I had been framed. You've been acting too high and mighty towards Mom lately. What? I was stunned by his sudden accusation. Far from acting superior, I had mostly been on the receiving end of orders. Most of the time, it was too tiring to argue, so I just agreed with whatever was said. It was absurd for him to say such things based only on what he heard from his mother, especially since he never witnessed how she constantly berated me. Mom is just trying to teach you how to be a good wife. Just follow her lead. After shouting at me, Steve looked satisfied with himself, and the mother-in-law applauded him. No one bothered to ask if I was hurt. I was furious. Ignoring him and mother-in-law, I cooled my foot. While my temper did not subside and I remained irritated, fortunately, the burn cooled down. Every time they saw me, they accused me of trying to hurt the mother-in-law, calling me a terrible wife. But I ignored all their comments. Let them say what they want. They'll be the ones to regret it in the end. The next day, I called my father and explained everything that had happened. That house is dangerous, come back home. He said that, but I asked for his help with something. Although he wanted to bring me home immediately, he became enthusiastic about helping once he heard my plan. That same day, my father came to the house where I lived with Steve and mother-in-law. My mom and dad are close to divorcing because they've been arguing, and it's sad to leave him in such a tense home, so I've decided to let my dad live with us from today. When I announced this, both Steve and mother-in-law were confused and started to object. What? Don't joke, Jenny. You can't just decide that without consulting me. That's too selfish, Jenny. How dare they say that? That's rich coming from you. You decided to live with your mother without consulting me at all. As I glared at him, Steve retorted. That's because this house is in my name. Yes, the house is in your name. But I had forgotten, but I used my savings from before we were married as the down payment for this house. Thinking about it, isn't this marital property? When Steve suddenly announced he would be living with his mother, I was too embarrassed to argue back then because I didn't know better. However, if a house is in Steve's name and the wife has contributed to the payments, it's considered marital property. Additionally, there was a time when I was paying the living expenses from my part-time job earnings. Therefore, there's no reason for him to do whatever he wants with his house because it's also mine. My comment left Steve speechless. The mother-in-law, flustered, looked back and forth between us. By the way, Steve, did you wash those clothes yourself? Caught off guard by my father's sudden comment, Steve looked bewildered. No. Jenny does the housework. At this, my father raised an eyebrow. Jenny's job? Don't you help out at all? This is your house, isn't it? Don't you do any housework in your own house? Well, the house belongs to Jenny too. You just boasted that it was your house. Can't you take care of your own home? Please stop. Steve is pitiful. As my father and Steve argued, the mother-in-law intervened. My father, knowing the situation from my stories, stared sternly at her. Oh. And who made that breakfast this morning? Jenny did. Do you have a problem with that? Of course, I do. You just eat the food she makes and wear the clothes she washes. And when I blamed him for that, you say Steve is pitiful? Isn't my daughter the one who's pitiful? Father continued. The only time you can say pitiful is if Steve does more housework than my daughter, and nevertheless I blame him unnecessarily. Are you saying it's pitiful because it's spot on and you want me to stop pointing it out? As my father relentlessly pointed out their faults, both Steve and his mother's faces turned red. Dad, let's leave it at that. You're right, but if you go on, these two might cry from embarrassment. They brought it upon themselves, yet they're so fragile. Laughing, my father's laughter made me chuckle too. What the hell? You're my wife, so of course, you should take care of me. Yes. It's enviable that you get to take care of Steve. I'd switch places with you if I could. Are they out of their minds? Do they even have brains? Steve, what you're describing isn't a wife but a slave, or maybe an unconditional mother who does everything for you. A wife should automatically take care of her husband's personal needs? Then, as a husband, you should also take care of mine. Marriage is about equality. My words made Steve freeze, and the mother-in-law became furious. Jenny. How can you speak to Steve like that? Oh, I'm just teaching Steve how to be a husband. I would like him to follow it properly. Don't you think so? And how exactly have you been speaking to my daughter, madam? My father and I mirrored the accusations they had made. Confronted with their own words, Steve and his mother fell silent. Really? People who can't do anything by themselves shouldn't be giving orders. All you do is tell others what to do without lifting a finger yourselves. Even when the pot tipped over last time. You seem to believe everything your mother says, but remember, I was the one who saved your precious mom. Steve widened his eyes in surprise at my words. That time, your mother was the one who attacked me while I was cooking. She caused the pot to nearly tip over, so I had to push her away to protect her. I ended up getting burned because of it. And yet, neither of you thanked me. Instead, you both blamed me. I've had enough of this house. My blunt words made Steve raise his voice. Wait, Jenny, what do you mean by enough? His face, which had been red with embarrassment, quickly turned pale. Enough means just that. I'm done with this house, with you, with everything. I'm filing for divorce. The mother-in-law grinned, pleased, while Steve froze. Wait, Jenny. I don't hate you. Maybe I got a bit carried away, it was just youthful folly. I was taking you for granted. Please understand. Youthful folly doesn't turn someone into a mama's boy. No matter what you say now, I dislike having a husband who walks arm in arm with his mother. What? It seemed that Steve had always considered such behavior normal. For the first time, he looked puzzled as if asking. That was the problem? No way we can understand each other in a lifetime. Choosing divorce is the right decision. However, the mother-in-law seemed unhappy with Steve's reaction. Steve. You don't need to hold on to such a woman. I'm here for you. She clung to him as if she were his girlfriend. But he shook her off. It's because Mom clings to me that things have gotten to this point. It's like everyone says I'm a mama's boy. It's your fault, Mom. What's wrong with being a mama's boy? You used to tell me how much you loved me. What are you talking about? I've always felt you were in the way. Please, Jenny, come back. I'll cut ties with her. What do you mean, Steve? Would you choose a woman who wants to abandon you over your own mother who raised you? Quiet. Just shut up, Mom. Traitor Steve. Heartless son. I trusted you. As a fierce argument broke out between mother and son, my father and I watched quietly for a moment, then exchanged a knowing look. Let's go home, Jenny. The atmosphere here is too toxic. Yes. It feels like even my lungs are becoming mama's boy. Thus, my brief marriage came to an end. Later, I mailed the divorce papers and successfully finalized the divorce. There was no compensation, which was fine by me as I was eager to cut ties quickly. Steve remained with his mother after saying he would cut ties, but when he tried to remarry a woman 5 years his junior, problems arose. His mother did not like the girl. Moreover, she tried to sabotage their relationship, leading to Steve finally cutting her off in anger. Later, it turned out that the girl was cheating, so the remarriage was called off, and Steve tried to reconcile with his mother. But this time, her mood did not improve. Having been repeatedly told he valued other women over his mother, she had finally had enough of him. Shocked, Steve fell into a spiral, becoming obsessed with a girl at a nightclub and ending up in debt. It's ironic that he cut ties with his mother and then couldn't handle the shock. Well, that's just like my ex-husband, always only seeing things from his point of view. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying my single life without remarrying. The company I joined after the divorce turned out to be a great fit for me since I excel in roles involving interaction with people. Thanks to my achievements there, I've been promoted quickly. Work has become more enjoyable than romance. While it's still hard for women to reach the same status as men, I'm aiming high. Holding one of the highest positions among women, it's not an impossible situation. It might still take some time, but having goals in life makes things interesting. Starting my job has broadened my social network and increased my circle of friends. Recently, I've even made friends at the sports gym I started attending with colleagues, and now we're planning a trip together. By the way, I've started dieting. No one interferes, and though it's not flashy, my days are sparkling with fun.